Take your daughters. Why? And that one you are carrying.
He called them a disappointment.
Get out of my house.
He watched them walk away. He believed he had lost nothing. But years later, when death came knocking at his door, the only person standing between him and the grave was the daughter he rejected. But that was not the only lesson Chief Nwanike was about to learn. Because what happens when the son you sacrifice everything for becomes the person who tries to destroy you, while the daughters you rejected becomes the ones standing between you and death? Chief Nwanike was about to learn the most painful lesson of his life.
Amara?
But before that day came, there was a gate. A gate he closed on the woman who gave him everything. When Amara walked out of that gate, she did not look back. Not because she was not hurting, but because she was afraid that if she looked back, she would not be able to keep moving forward. And her daughters needed her to keep moving forward. So she kept her eyes ahead and she walked. The journey back to her parents' house was the longest of her life. Not because of the distance, but because of everything she carried inside her. 9 years, 4 pregnancies, a shop she had closed, a future she had trusted him with, a woman she used to be whose name she could barely remember. All of it pressing against her chest as she sat in that bus with 3 daughters asleep around her. Adora's head on her shoulder, Ugochi curled beside her, little Chidera in her arms, and the 4th child still moving inside her, still fighting, still alive. Amara looked out the window into the darkness passing by, and for the first time since everything happened, she allowed herself to cry. Not the controlled tears of a woman performing dignity in front of guests. This time, real tears. The kind that comes from somewhere so deep inside you that your whole body shakes. She cried for the woman she used to be. She cried for the shop she closed. She cried for every morning she had swallowed a comment that left a mark and said nothing. She cried for her daughters who had stood there watching their father point at them like they were evidence of a crime. She cried until there was nothing left, and when it was over, something else was there. Quiet, still, something that felt strangely like the very beginning of clarity. Her parents were waiting at the door when she arrived. Her mother saw her before she even reached the gate. One look at her daughter's face and she knew. A mother always knows. Amara. That was all she said. And before Amara could hold herself together anymore, she fell apart. Not loudly. The quiet cry of a woman who has been strong for too long. Her mother held her. Her father stood behind them both in silence. Because what do you say when your only daughter comes back home after giving everything and returns feeling like she failed? That night, after the children were sleeping, her father sat across from her at the kitchen table. He did not ask her to explain. He did not say, "I told you so." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, You built something once, my daughter.
You will
build again. That is who you are. Amara looked at this man who had once sat in a small shop and watched her handle difficult customers with pride. This man who had told anyone who would listen that his daughter was not waiting for anyone to save her. She nodded, not because she fully believed it yet, but because she trusted the person saying it. Now, 2 weeks after she came home, the pain started. She ignored it at first, told herself it was exhaustion, but something inside her knew. Her mother rushed her to the hospital, and when the doctors came out, the look on their faces said everything before any words did. The baby was gone. Amara lay in that hospital bed with her hand on her stomach, empty now, and the silence in that room was the heaviest thing she had ever carried. Because that child had survived the humiliation. That child had survived the walk out of that gate. Had survived the bus journey in the dark. She had protected that child through everything. And now the child was gone. Her mother held her hand And Amara stared at the ceiling for a long time without speaking. Then she closed her eyes and whispered so quietly that her mother had to lean in to hear her. God,
I need you
to show me the way. Because I have nothing left. Show me the way. The community talked. Amara? They always do. Did you hear about Amara? Chief sent her away after 3 girls. She lost the first one too. Some said it with pity. Some said it with the quiet satisfaction that hides behind concern. But what hurt Amara more than the whispers was watching people reduce her entire life to one thing: the gender of her children. Nobody talked about the business she had built. Nobody talked about the years she had worked. Nobody talked about the woman who existed before she became Chief Nwanike's wife. But Amara remembered, and slowly she stood up. She went back to the one thing she knew: building. Not houses this time, a life. She started the way she had started the first time: small, very small. A few bags of cement bought on credit, a small transaction, a name that some people still remembered. Contractors who had not forgotten her said,
Amara
"Is this not Amara? Amara that used to sell on that street. Her materials were always good. Her words were always true." Reputation. The thing you build in the honest moments nobody is watching. It was still there, waiting for her. Because integrity does not expire. Even when everything else is taken, what you build in truth remains. Every morning, she prepared her daughters for school. Then she went out. She met suppliers. She chased customers. She negotiated. She carried responsibilities that would have broken many people. And every time she wanted to stop, she looked at her daughters. Those same girls Chief Nwanike had pointed at like evidence of failure were now her greatest reason to continue. Because those girls were becoming something quietly, without announcement, without asking anyone's permission. Adora, the firstborn, had always been the quiet one, the one who watched everything with careful eyes. She had been in that hospital the night her mother lost the 4th baby. She had stood in the corridor, watching the doctors work, and something had ignited inside her that night that never went out. She worked for it the way her mother had taught her. Early mornings, late nights, no shortcuts, no complaining. Just the quiet, relentless effort of someone who knows exactly what she wants and why she wants it. Ugochi, the second daughter, had her mother's eyes for business. Even as a child, she was always asking questions. Why do people choose this supplier and not that one? How can this be better? Where is the opportunity that others are missing? And Amara would watch her and smile because she recognized herself completely. That mind, that curiosity, that eye that could see what others walked past without noticing. And Chidera, the youngest, had always been the one who noticed when something was wrong. Even as a small child, she could not watch injustice pass without questioning it. Amara used to say, "My daughter, you will argue with the whole village one day." She did not know how right she was. Meanwhile, back in Chief Nwanike's compound, the story everyone had celebrated was beginning to change. The son who had arrived with so much fanfare, the heir, the answer to all the prayers, was becoming a problem, a very expensive problem. Chief Nwanike could not bring himself to discipline the child he had prized above everything. So the boy grew up never hearing the word no. He never learned what things cost. He never learned what hard work felt like. He had a father whose guilt made him generous, and a mother who told him daily that he was the most important person in the house. The combination was dangerous. The money started disappearing, scandal after scandal. Every time Chief Nwanike tried to correct him, the boy had an answer. You wanted a son. Here I am. Those words hurt more than any insult, because somewhere deep inside, Chief Nwanike knew they were true. He had spent years demanding a son, but he never asked himself what kind of son he was going to raise, and now he was living with the answer. The frustration was building, the money was shrinking, and the company that had once been his pride was struggling, and then something else began happening. Chief Nwanike started saying things he had never said before, quietly at first, then louder. What happened to Adora? He would ask. Is Amara's business still running? What are my daughters doing now? Small questions, but dangerous ones, because they revealed something shifting inside him, a man beginning to see what he had refused to see for years. His wife heard those questions, and she understood exactly what they meant. He was beginning to wake up, and a man who woke up, he would understand what he would find out. So she and her son made a decision, a terrible decision, the kind that people make when fear removes all other thinking. One evening, Chief Nwanike left home, a simple journey, one he had made many times before. He did not know that before he reached his destination, someone had already decided he would not arrive. The car moved normally at first, until it did not, until the moment he needed his brakes and they failed him. The accident was terrible. People who saw it said they did not understand how he survived. Chief Emeritus Nwanike, the man with the red cap, the titled man, was unconscious, helpless, completely at the mercy of a world he had spent his whole life believing he controlled. The news spread like wildfire. Chief Nwanike in serious accident, fighting for his life. The same people who once stood when he entered rooms were now speaking about him in hushed voices. The local doctors did what they could, but his injuries were complicated. They needed a specialist, someone with the skill and experience to fight for a life that was barely holding on. They made inquiries and they were given a name, one of the best doctors in the country, and that name would change everything. When Adora received the emergency referral file, she was in the middle of a busy shift. She reached for it without looking, and then she read the name. Chief Emeritus Nwanike. She went still. The nurses around her did not understand why that doctor, who handled every difficult case without fear, had suddenly stopped moving. But Adora understood. The unconscious man in that file was her father. And for a moment, she was not a doctor. She was a little girl again.
Look at them!
Standing beside her mother,
3 daughters.
Watching a man point at her and her sisters like they were evidence of a crime.
My name?
She remembered the cake on the floor, the microphone in her mother's trembling hands, the gate closing behind them. She remembered all of it. Then she looked at the file again, at the medical reports, at the severity of what was in front of her. A life, regardless of whose, a life. She picked up the file and said, "Prepare the theater." She operated with the same precision she brought to every case. Every decision was based on one thing: saving a life. Not because she had forgotten what he did, but because she had learned something from the woman who raised her. Pain should not turn you into the person who caused it. Amara had walked out of that gate with nothing and had never become bitter. Her daughter would not become bitter either. For days, Chief Nwanike lay unconscious, unaware that the daughter he had once rejected was the reason he was still breathing. Unaware that the child he had pointed at in front of a room full of guests was the one fighting hardest for him. When Chief Nwanike finally opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was not his son, not the woman who had replaced Amara. It was Adora. Standing beside his bed with a clipboard in her hand, a white coat, the calm professional manner of a woman who knew exactly who she was. Chief Nwanike stared at her, his mind struggling to connect the woman standing before him with the little girl he remembered. Adora? The name came out like a question. She looked at him and said, "Yes, sir." 2 words.
Yes, sir.
Respectful, but not warm. And those 2 words hurt more than anger would have. Because anger would have meant she was still holding on. Distance meant she had healed, and he was not part of the healing. "You saved me?"
You saved me?
Chief Nwanike asked.
God
did, Amara said. 2 words. And those words did something to his chest that the accident had not managed to do. Because everything came back at once. Every word he had said, Every finger he had pointed and this daughter he had called a burden had saved his life anyway. Tears came, old man tears, the kind that come when regret arrives too late. Adora, I am sorry. The words came out of Chief Nwanike's mouth. The words were broken, almost too quiet to hear. She looked away because some wounds heal, but scars still remain. A nurse appeared at the door and said to her, "Doctor, your next patient is ready." Adora gathered a file, then she looked at him one last time. Rest well, Chief. Not Dad, not Father. Chief. The title he had loved more than anything. And hearing it from her mouth in that way was the most painful thing he had heard in years. Because he realized he had spent his whole life protecting his name and lost the people who would have called him something better. But even in that hospital bed, Chief Nwanike had not lost his instincts. Something about the accident troubled him in a way he could not dismiss. He had driven the car many times before. He knew it. Something was definitely wrong. From his hospital bed, with tubes in his arms and machines monitoring his heart, he made one quiet phone call to the person he trusted most outside his family, his private investigator.
Find out what happened to my car.
Everything. Then he waited.
Sir, on it.
While Chief was in hospital, back in his compound, a different kind of destruction was happening. His wife and son had expected a funeral. They were now faced with a man who was still alive, and they panicked. Panic makes people careless. They started moving things, assets, accounts. His son signed documents he had no authority to sign. His wife redirected funds. Investors who were already nervous about the state of the company saw what was happening and left one by one. One by one, the company that Chief had built over decades, already weakened by years of neglect, and the cost of his son, who took everything and built nothing, collapsed completely. By the time Chief recovered enough to make inquiries, there was almost nothing left. His board members sat in front of him with the kind of faces people make when delivering news that cannot be softened. Chief, the company is finished. The only hope of recovery is an acquisition. There is one company positioned well enough to absorb what remains. We have been in contact. They are willing to meet. Chief Nwanike looked at the company profile, a business that had grown quietly from building materials into construction and other sectors. A name that had started small and expanded without noise until serious people were paying attention. He read the name of the CEO. Something moved in his chest that he could not completely explain.
Set up the meeting.
Set up the meeting, he said firmly. The boardroom was neutral ground. Chief arrived with what remained of his team. The door opened and Amara walked in. She did not perform an entrance. She simply arrived the way people do when they are completely comfortable with where they are. She carried a folder and moved with the ease of someone who had spent years building rooms exactly like this one. Chief Nwanike's board members began making introductions. Chief heard none of it. He was looking at the woman his mother had called useless. The woman he had pointed at in front of a room full of guests and told to leave. The woman who had walked out of his gate carrying 3 daughters and a pregnancy that would not survive the journey. She sat down across from him. She looked up and their eyes met. Neither of them said anything except what the business required. Amara was professional and clear. She asked the right questions and gave precise answers and handled the room the way she had once handled difficult suppliers in a small shop on a busy street. By the end of the meeting, the future of Chief Nwanike's company sat entirely in Amara's hands. When the private investigator's report arrived the same day, Chief read it twice in his car before he could move. The brakes had been deliberately tampered with. Not a mechanical fault, not an accident. Someone with access to his home, someone who knew his schedule, had made a deliberate decision that he should not survive that journey. The report named them, and it was his wife and his son. He sat in that car for a long time without moving, because a man can prepare himself for many things in life, business failure, betrayal from rivals, the cruelty of strangers. But there is no preparation for the moment you discover that the people sitting at your own table had looked at you and decided the world was better without you. He picked up his phone and called the police. His voice was steady, his hands were not. His wife and son were arrested the following morning. They were taken from the same compound where Amara had once been thrown out with nothing but her children and her dignity. The same gate closed behind them, just differently this time. The case landed in court, attempted murder, a serious charge. When Chidera received the file and saw the names of the accused, she went still. She read through everything carefully. Then she walked into her senior partner's office and placed the file on the desk. I cannot handle this case. The accused are connected to my family. Nemo judex in causa sua. No one should be a judge in their own cause. Assigning to someone else. They deserve a fair hearing, even them. And then she walked out. That was the most powerful thing Chidera ever did in that case. Not fighting, stepping back, with principle, with the same quiet dignity her mother had carried out of the gate years ago. 3 weeks after the boardroom meeting, Chief Nwanike did something that had never been done in his life before. He asked for permission to visit someone, not as chief, not with his entourage, not with his title clearing the way. He called Amara's office and spoke to her receptionist. The receptionist came back and said Madam was available Thursday at 4 o'clock if he wanted to come in. He said yes. He put the phone down and sat very still for a long time. Thursday came. He left the house without the red cap. His driver dropped in at the entrance of our building and he walked in alone. The lobby was quiet and modern. Her name was on the board near the entrance alongside the company name. He stood there looking at it before he went upstairs. When he walked into her office, he was at her desk. He looked up. She did not stand. She looked up. She did not offer pleasantries. She gestured at the chair across from her and waited. He sat down and he placed his hands on his knees and looked around the room slowly, at the certificates on the wall, at the photograph on her desk of 3 young women who had their mother's eyes, and he looked at her. I am not here about the company. I want you to know that first. Amara put down her pen. I came here because there are things I should have said a long time ago. I was wrong, Amara. Not just about that day. About everything. About the way I saw you. About the way I saw our daughters. I spent years believing I needed a son to mean something. And in chasing that, I destroyed the best thing I had. Amara was quiet for a moment. She looked at him the way you look at something that once had enormous power over you and no longer does.
I destroyed the best thing.
Do you know what I think about sometimes? She said. Not the gender reveal. Not the words you said in front of those people. I think about the day I closed my shop. The day I handed over the keys because you told me a woman in your house did not need to work. I walked away from something that I built with my own hands because I trusted you. And for a long time, that hurt more than anything else you did. Because I made that choice willingly. Nobody forced me. I chose you over myself. Chief said nothing. But I stopped being angry about it, she continued. Because if I had not gone through everything I went through, I would not be sitting in this office with my name on that door. So I cannot hate the road that brought me here, even when the road was terrible. She paused for a moment, then she looked at him directly. Your daughters are extraordinary, Chief. Adora is one of the finest doctors in this country.
The same daughter you pointed at
in that compound is the same reason you are sitting here today. Ugochi is the reason anything of your name survives after what your wife and son did to it. And Chidera, when the case against them landed on her desk, withdrew herself immediately. She handed it to someone else and walked away without a word of bitterness. That is what those
That
girls
is what
became.
those girls became.
She leaned back
I'm not
slightly.
telling you this so you can.
I'm
feel
not telling you
proud.
this so you can feel proud. I'm telling you so you can understand what you were fighting against yourself to see all those years. They were never the problem, Chief. They were never the disappointment. They were always the answer. You just spent too long asking the wrong questions. Chief Nwanike sat in that chair and felt the full weight of every year he had watched settle upon him at once. Can I see them? He asked quietly.
Not to explain
myself.
Not to ask for
Not
anything.
to ask for anything.
I just want
to see them if they are willing. Amara looked at him for a long moment, then she picked up her phone and made a call. They came on a Saturday. Adora first, then Ugochi, then Chidera. They sat in their mother's sitting room and Chief Nwanike sat across from them. No entourage, no title, no red cap. Just a man facing 3 women he had once reduced to nothing with a pointed finger in a decorated compound. He looked at each of them. The little girl who had held her mother's dress. The one who had walked beside her mom. The baby Amara had carried in her arms out of that gate. They were not little anymore. They were extraordinary. And they were looking at him with their mother's eyes, calm, clear, unafraid. He did not make a speech. He did not try to explain himself or build a case for forgiveness. He simply said,
I am sorry.
I am sorry for all of it. You did not deserve any of it. And I am sorry. The room was quiet. Adora looked at him for a moment. Then she said, We know. And that was all. They did not fall into his arms. They did not cry. They sat with him for 2 hours and they talked, slowly, carefully. The way people talk when they are rebuilding something that has been broken for a long time and they are not in a hurry to pretend it is already whole. When he left that evening and walked to his car, he stopped at the gate and turned back. The light was on inside the house. He could hear laughter coming from one of the rooms, Amara's laugh. Then one of the girls, then all of them together. He stood there at the gate listening to it. Then he got into his car and he went home. Chief drove home alone that evening. He dismissed his driver at the gate and walked into the house himself. The compound was quiet. He sat in the living room without turning on the television and looked at the walls. The framed photographs of himself receiving his chieftaincy title, the mounted certificates, the evidence of a life built around protecting a name. He thought about Adora at the foot of his hospital bed in that white coat. He thought about the boardroom and the way Amara had walked in and not performed a single thing. He thought about his daughter sitting across from him in their mother's sitting room, looking at him with eyes that had learned to be calm because life had required it of them. He had wanted a son to carry his legacy. He had spent years making his wife feel like a failure, thrown away a marriage, brought a woman into his home because his mother selected her from a village, and watched the son who came from it spend his money, destroy his reputation, and then try to bury him in a ditch. And the whole time, 3 girls had been quietly becoming exactly what he had said they could never be. He reached up and removed the red cap. He set it on the table in front of him, and he sat there looking at it for a long time. This cap that had represented everything, his title, his pride, what he had believed his legacy was. He thought about the laughter he heard through Amara's window as he walked into the car. All of them together, easy, real. The sound of people who had survived something and were still standing. He left the red cap on the table and he went to bed. Amara still arrived at her office before anyone else most mornings. She liked the quiet of the early hour, the way the light came through the window and settled on her desk, the way her name looked on the door when she pushed it open each day. Her father's words were framed on the wall, not because she needed reminding anymore, but because some things deserve to be kept where you can see them. You may not see the shade immediately, but one day, people will sit under it. She had thought about those words in the hard seasons when she was not sure she would survive. In the slow seasons, when the rebuilding felt like it would take forever. In the morning, she sat across from a man who had once broken her and realized, quietly, that she was no longer breakable. She was fine, more than fine. She was exactly who she had always been, standing on the other side of everything that had tried to convince her otherwise. So she looked at those words every morning and she smiled. Not the performance smile, not the smile of a woman managing pain, the real one. The one that comes when you realize that everything you lost was only ever making space for everything you were always supposed to become. Chief Nwanike spent years looking for his son to carry his name, but he never realized that his daughters were already carrying something greater. His values, his legacy, the very thing he failed to recognize because he was too busy searching for what he thought he needed. Amara lost her marriage. She lost a home. She lost the life she knew. But what she gained was something nobody could ever take from her again: herself. Because sometimes the greatest comeback is not proving someone wrong. It is becoming someone they can no longer deny. And that was the story of Amara. A woman who walked out of a gate with nothing, but walked into a future she built with her own hands. So besties, if Amara's journey reminded you that strength can rise from the hardest moments, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Turn on your notifications so you never miss another unforgettable story. Because here, every story has a lesson, and the next one might be the story you never saw coming. Until next time, bestie.